Welcome to Catholic Connection with Teresa Tomeo, keeping you connected to your faith and your world. Teresa tackles the issues of faith and culture, the pro-life message, and media awareness. And now, here's Teresa Tomeo.
And wishing you a beautiful Monday. It's June 16, 2025. Great to be with you here on EWTN's Catholic Connection. And a big thank you to my little sister, as I always say, for another Mr. Vanessa Denha-Garmo, host of Epiphany radio program on Ave Maria Radio, for filling in for me on Friday. And thanks to, of course, the great crew at EWTN for working with her so well, as they always do. Great team we have putting this show together. And we have a great show today. As always, we try to bring you the best and keep you connected, hence the name of the program, Catholic Connection. We are going to be checking in shortly after the weather, the news, and all that good stuff. Matt Swaim from the Sunrise Morning Show and the Journey Home. He joins us on Mondays for Journey Home Highlights. And then we're going to have a very important and interesting interview with my longtime friend. I've known her for years. She's amazing. Lisa Wheeler. She's a president of Carmel Communications. And we're going to talk about scammers going after Catholic stars and their fans. This is something we've seen a lot in the secular world. Well, it's been hitting recently in the Catholic world. And there's things that you should know and things that you can do. There's actually a big campaign that's being conducted with help from the White House in terms of working through churches across the country to help people know what's going on, because oftentimes these scammers, with AI and how advanced everything is, can really fool people into thinking, let's say, a Jonathan Rumi or a Father Michael Schmitz or another very popular personality who also happens to, have a huge platform of faith, asking for money, and that's not what they do. And if you get messages like that, then you should think twice, obviously, and be very, very careful. So Lisa will dive into that with us. And of course, we'll also talk with our wonderful Gail Buckley for our scripture verse of the week on a Monday morning. In the second hour of the program, we'll fill you in on that momentarily. But first, we want to take a look at the weather, because again, we have severe weather across the country and heavy rain, scattered severe thunderstorms capable of producing severe gusts, large hail, and perhaps even a few tornadoes. This is being forecast from the north central high plains into the upper Mississippi Valley. Widespread thunderstorms may produce excessive rainfall across portions of the Ohio Valley and Mid-Atlantic. Very, very hot conditions and critical fire weather looming over the Great Basin and the Southwest through midweek. Speaking of extremely warm weather, it is really, really hot in Italy. It's actually a little bit warmer than normal. Normally in June, it's in the 80s. But it's been consistently pushing 100 degrees and making for some real rough touring. So if you're heading over to Italy, make sure to dress appropriately. You cannot wear shorts or sleeveless shirts. If you're a woman inside a church, you have to have something over your shoulders. But it's very warm. You need a heads up on that. I mean, not saying don't come, because, a lot of people travel in the summertime. They want to take their families. But just give yourself a heads up and try to do the tours in the morning and get them out of the way. Then you can just relax and maybe have a light pranzo and just kind of take it easy and stay out of the sun. We, after Friday, had some business to take care of regarding our residency, but then over the weekend we did go down to Rome, took a train down to Rome and visited with Joan Lewis, which was a lot of fun, as we always do. Yesterday we had brunch with her, and also got to see a new friend of mine from the EWTN family in Rome, Anthony Johnson, who's a brilliant videographer and producer, who actually is the videographer behind my series, Saints in Italy, of course, based on the EWTN book, Italy's Shrines and Wonders. So got to catch up with him. He was telling me about a fabulous project that EWTN's doing in Iceland, from where he just returned. So that was great to see Anthony, and thank him for all the hard work he did last year on the Saints in Italy series. So, and don't forget to check that out, EWTN.com/Saints in Italy. The Caravaggio exhibit is the reason Deacon Dom and I headed down to Rome, which is running through July 3rd. And I think the tickets, even though there were some available online, I think they're all sold out now. But we'll talk a little bit more about that, the amazing Caravaggio exhibit in the Barberini Palace, and also all the different events that are going on this week throughout Italy and, of course, around the world for the Feast of Corpus Christi. The Corpus Christi miracle, the Eucharistic miracle there, is housed in Orvieto. So you can imagine all the things that go on there. So we'll talk about that on Italy's Shrines and Wonders Wednesday. In the news also, we're going to be talking about the canonizations now have been set for Blessed Pier Giorgio Frassati. Actually reset for him. That was already scheduled, but they decided to canonize him along with Carlo Acutis on the same day, and that will happen in early September. That will be a news story for us this morning. So that is what's happening here with me and with you. I hope you're doing well, but let's get started because there's a ton of news to get through, as you might imagine, with everything happening, the big parade for the Army on Saturday, developments with the Pope and the wonderful speech he gave to the people via video in Chicago, and of course some sad news from around the country and the world regarding some crime, but we'll bring you up to date on everything. But just remember, we keep you informed, but God is still in control. He's still very large, as I like to say, and in charge. Let's take a look at the news at 5 minutes past the hour. It's a Monday, June 16th on EWTN. Well, in St. Peter's, in front of thousands of athletes of all levels, backgrounds in sports, the Holy Father presiding over Mass to close the Jubilee of Sport and celebrate the solemnity of the Most Holy Trinity over the weekend. In his homily, he reflected on how unusual the connection between the Trinity and sports might seem, but he also pointed out that since every good human activity reflects God's infinite beauty, in some way, sport is certainly one of these, he said. Sports, he continued, according to Vatican News, can help us encounter God because they challenge us to relate to others and with others, not only outwardly, but also, and above all, interiorly. If not, he says, sport becomes nothing more than an empty competition of inflated egos. And thousands of young people and adults gathering in Chicago at the home of the White Sox, the Major League Baseball team, over the weekend on Saturday for a joyful celebration organized by the Archdiocese of Chicago to honor the recent election of their native son, Pope Leo XIV. Now, in a video message, the newly elected Pope, formerly Archbishop in Peru, expressing gratitude and encouragement to the young people of his hometown and the world as well.
As you grow up together, you may realize, especially having lived through the time of the pandemic, times of isolation, of great difficulty, sometimes even difficulties in your families, in our world today. Sometimes it may be that the context of your life has not given you the opportunity to live the faith, to live as participants in a faith community. And I'd like to take this opportunity to invite each one of you to look into your own hearts, to recognize that God is present, and that perhaps in many different ways, God is reaching out to you, calling you, inviting you to know his Son, Jesus Christ, through the Scriptures, perhaps through a friend or a relative, a grandparent who might be a person of faith, but to discover how important it is for each one of us to pay attention to the presence of God in our own hearts, to that longing for love in our lives, for searching, a true searching, for finding the ways that we may be able to do something with our own lives to serve others.
The event held on the Feast of the Most Holy Trinity, attended by Cardinal Blaise Cupich, who also celebrated Mass, auxiliary bishops, clergy, families, and young people from across the Archdiocese and beyond. Meanwhile, the Pope holding the first ordinary public consistory of his pontificate on Friday morning, with cardinals giving their formal approval for the canonization of 8 blesseds. Now, during the ceremony, the Holy Father announcing that Blessed Pier Giorgio Frassati and Carlo Acutis will be canonized together, and that's coming up on September 7th. The canonization of the 2 young saints, one from the early 20th century, the other from the 21st century, have been greatly anticipated due to the great devotion among the Catholic faithful. The late Pope himself announcing the canonizations of Pier Giorgio Frassati and Carlo Acutis at the general audience last November 20th, prompting thunderous applause from the crowds that were gathered that day in St. Peter's Square. Now, the canonization of Carlo Acutis, who was beatified in Assisi on October 10th in 2020, had originally been set for April 27th, the second Sunday of Easter, to coincide with the Jubilee of Teens, while Frassati's canonization had been set for early August 3rd, the culmination of the Jubilee for Youth. The postponement of Blessed Carlo's canonization announced on the day of the Pope's death, April 21st, and it was widely assumed that Blessed Pier Giorgio's canonization would also be delayed. In other news this morning, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is defending now his country's military actions against Iran. In an interview with Fox News, he said yesterday Israel will do whatever is necessary to remove the nuclear threat that country poses.
We had to act. It was the 12th hour. We did act to save ourselves, but also, I think, to not only protect ourselves, but protect the world from this incendiary regime.
This escalation of airstrikes and missile attacks resulting in a growing number of deaths in both countries. Meanwhile, President Trump claiming in a post on Truth Social the U.S. could easily get a deal done between Iran and Israel and end this bloody conflict. Iran and the U.S. were set to hold another round of talks in the country of Oman, but those talks have been canceled due to the fighting. And the president is warning Iran to stay away from U.S. targets as its conflict with Israel continues. Senate Majority Leader John Thune reiterated the president's point on Fox News Sunday.
What I would suggest to Iran is that they not target Americans in any of this, because if they do, they better be prepared, because we will respond.
The South Dakota Republicans' comments echoing the president's post on Truth Social, warning if the U.S. is attacked in any way, shape, or form by Iran, the full strength and might of the U.S. armed forces will come down on you at all levels as never seen before. Trump also claiming the U.S. could easily again get a deal done between the two countries. The suspect in the killing of a Minnesota lawmaker and her husband set to appear in court this afternoon. Vance Bolter facing multiple charges after a 2-day manhunt, including 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of attempted murder. He's accused of killing Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband and shooting Senator John Hoffman and his wife. The Justice Department is looking into possible federal charges after investigators say they also found a hit list with names of some federal lawmakers. The superintendent of the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, Drew Evans, says it appears Bolter acted, though, by himself.
We are confident that the violence that he committed and the murders he committed and the attempted murders, that he conducted that activity alone.
The state rep Melissa Hortman and her husband again were shot and killed early Saturday in their Brooklyn Park home, around 11 miles northwest of Minnesota. And about 1.5 hours earlier, State Senator John Hoffman and his wife were shot multiple times 5 miles away. The suspect is a former Walz appointee. The governor of Minnesota appointed him in 2019 to a 4-year term on his Workforce Development Board. That's according to the New York Post. He earlier served on the governor's Workforce Development Council in 2016 under the former Minnesota governor as well. Multiple police officers were hurt in Portland over the weekend on Saturday night during a violent riot at an Immigration and Customs Enforcement ICE facility. A mob launched fireworks, smoke grenades, and threw rocks at federal law enforcement as they broke glass and forcibly entered the ICE facility, according to Homeland Security Assistant Secretary. 4 officers were hurt during the attack, though federal law enforcement was able to secure that facility. And as we wrap up our newscast, Michael Kastner tells us the suspect is in custody following that deadly shooting during weekend protests in Salt Lake City.
Police arrested 24-year-old Arturo Gamboa in connection with a shooting during the No Kings protest that killed a 39-year-old man. Shortly after shots were fired, officers said they found Gamboa wounded and hiding with an AR-15-style rifle nearby. Witnesses said Gamboa removed the rifle from his backpack and ran toward the protest crowd. The man believed to have been at the scene as part of a peacekeeping team opened fire on Gamboa, who was taken to the hospital for treatment before being booked on a murder charge. I'm Michael Kastner.
It is a Monday morning. It's June 16, 2025. Great to be with you on EWTN's Catholic Connection. When we come back, we will talk with Matt Swaim from EWTN's A Journey Home. Journey Home highlights, of course, he's also the host of the Sunrise Morning Show, heard every day right here on this radio network. It's a Monday. We're glad you're tuned in. We'll be right back. Bringing you a beautiful Monday morning. It's June 16, 2025. Great to be with you every day here on EWTN's Catholic Connection. And always exciting to catch up with my friend and colleague here at EWTN Radio, Matt Swaim at the Sunrise Morning Show. Getting ready to connect with him in a second. And of course, he also works behind the scenes at the Journey Home as the producer of the program and working with the Coming Home Network, which is a phenomenal network. Of course, that was founded by convert Marcus Brodi. So it's just an awesome program. It's one of my favorites. I actually had the opportunity to be on the program a long time ago. Gosh, it's probably been over 10 years. But I think it's just so helpful to so many people to be able to watch, and not just those who are thinking about coming into the church or coming back to the church. I think it's an excellent way for all of us to get re-educated in the faith or educated in the faith, whatever the case may be, because what you hear on these fabulous programs every Monday night are these testimonies and how the people walk through the various teachings of the church, the challenges that they had and why, and what drew them to Catholicism. And also I think it's encouraging because I think sometimes growing up Catholic, we tend, I know I did for many years, take our faith for granted. And the beauty and the, as we like to say sometimes, the smells and bells of the Catholic Church and one holy Catholic and apostolic faith are very, very attractive to people, especially also, most importantly, the consistency of the teaching that goes back over 2,000 years and the church which can be traced to Jesus himself. So, do we have Matt? Are we trying to reach Matt? Okay, we are still trying to reach Matt. But anyway, he'll be with us in a moment. Matt asked me a question. Oh, we have him. Do we have him? There you are.
Hey, Teresa, how are you?
Hi. I got worried. I thought maybe you forgot about us.
Well, I can't forget with Rich Jesse having my
hounding
cell phone
you. Anyhow, I was just talking about the Journey Home and what a great program it is. So, speaking of which, what's coming up tonight?
Oh, I'm so excited about the one tonight. It's a guy I've been wanting to have on for a while. His name's Eddie Trask, and he used to work for the Augustine Institute. So he's got
Great
that
place.
kind of catechetical background, but he's now working directing Catholic Charities in Idaho. But that comes a lot out of his own experience he was raised Catholic, but then hit really a low spot in his life. And we're talking a low spot in every way that a person can hit a low spot. And he's actually very open and frank and honest about how much of his own bad life decisions contributed to that. But now that he's in Catholic Charities and able to work with people who are struggling to break addictions, to find employment, to figure out how to give their families the best lives they can on limited resources, he's able to speak with a sense of compassion and even conversion and really treat those things like works of mercy through Catholic Charities. And I think it's so cool for someone to be able to have come out on the other side of all those things and then turn around and use those gifts for people who are struggling in those same situations.
Well, I do think that when you go through a situation, a rough situation, it can affect you either two ways. I mean, obviously we don't like suffering. Very few of us are like the great saints who want suffering. Oh, bring it on, for the God's greater glory. We struggle with it because we're human, but I think you can go one way or the other. You could go, okay, I'm going to learn something from this, or I'm going to let it get the best to me. And sometimes in the beginning when you're going through it, it's I think a little easier to say, oh, I'm it's really angry, and you get stuck sometimes. But when you really offer it up, the Romans 8:28 thing can come true.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and Eddie's story is really indicative of the kind of reason that Mother Angelica wanted the Journey Home to exist. So I don't know how much you know about the origin story, but Marcus was working with Protestant pastors starting back in 1993, and Mother Angelica caught wind of it, and in 1997 was the first episode of the Journey Home. But the reason that she wanted to have these stories told is because the number one thing that she got calls about, as well as I know that you get calls about this all the time too, is people who are Catholic and they're like, my kid, I raised them Catholic, they left the church, I don't know what to do. And then Mother thought that by having a program that shared these conversion stories, people could have a little hope and realize that sometimes these people do come back. And Eddie is the perfect example. He was like an altar server, right? And then he still just ended up walking away. I'm sure his parents thought that they'd done everything they were supposed to do, right?
Right. And they probably did.
They probably did.
There's no guarantee. I mean, at some point, it gets to be between that person. It's always going to be between that
Rosie
person and
Posey
God.
did the same for you.
Exactly. She did. Yeah. Absolutely.
But again, this goes back to one of the great mysteries of our faith, and that is that I'm humbled and honored that God gave me the profound gift of free will, but I'm a little annoyed that he gave it to my offspring.
Well, maybe you can pray about that and see what God says to you.
Maybe I'll think about taking that up in prayer. I don't know.
Yeah. You got to do the Italian thing, though, and just be like my mother and say, I'm your mother, and I'm going to be your mother till the day I die. Then I'm going to come back and haunt you because I'll always have eyes in the back of my head. She told me that. Seriously, right before she died.
I'm remembering what Richard Lane once told me. He said that when he was a kid and got bored with his mom's Lutheran church, and he says, I don't want to go to this Lutheran church. And she said, boy, you're going to go to somebody's church. So
No, I wanted to ask you, though, I think what's so great, in addition to all the things you mentioned about how the whole show got started and the great testimonies, is that you do have reverts on, not just converts, which is amazing, but you have the reverts on, too, which I think is super important.
Well, and it is because, it's sort of like the communion of saints is the model for this. The more saints that we see that represent a wide variety of life experiences and a wide variety of cultural experiences, the more that anybody can look at that and say, you know what, that's a possibility for me. The more stories that we have, some people walk away out of just kind of laziness and inattention. Some people walk away because they're angry at the church. Some people walk away because something else got in their life and became the most important thing. And for Eddie, it was very much that, his own kind of like desire to numb his own pain became, his God in a lot of ways. And I'm telling you, he is very frank and open about where those roads took him. I think that there's going to be some really powerful response to how honestly Eddie shares a lot of that stuff on tonight's episode.
And so you get, I'm sure, when you have, all the episodes, you probably get tons of email and follow-up, but how do you track follow-up with the people who are, like, because they're watching this or maybe they're just coming across it and they say, ooh, this has something for me and I need to find out. Do you connect with them personally, part of the Coming Home Network team?
Teresa Tomeo, you have just stated the whole raison d'etre of the Coming Home Network, because that's actually the day job for all of us around here, is actually working with and walking with these people who find us through all kinds of different ways. The journey home is a big way, but it's funny. Sometimes people think of us as an apologetics outreach, and we do a little bit of that, but mostly we find people who are aiming towards the church in some way and have no idea what to do next, and they have no people in their life that they feel like they can talk to. Some of them are terrified about the idea of actually contacting a Catholic priest yet. So yeah, we just walk with them, and as John Mark Grodi says all the time, help them to take the next right step. Like, what's the next right step?
Well, in many cases, because you have pastors, they're leaving their livelihoods, and so that's a whole other area I know that you deal with, right? Yeah,
we've got something like 85 pastors have contacted us for the first time so far this year.
Wow.
So, for them, some of them, it'd be great for them to just drop everything and leave right now, but they would also be evicted from their house, right? Yeah. They got kids in school. They got sometimes sick family members that they're taking care of. And so, we got to figure all that out. What's the next right step? And sometimes that's complicated. But, often for people who are in that situation, the biggest question is loneliness. Or, I'm sure this was the case for you, Teresa, thinking to yourself how embarrassed you were that you'd gotten life wrong for so long. And who is it that you felt like you could trust and open up to about what God was doing and where he was steering you? And that's a huge part of what we do. It is.
Yeah, especially when you're in the public, like I was and still am, in terms of being on the air and then talking
all
about
these
the media.
Pastors are public figures.
Well, exactly, because they have a huge platform. Matt, thank you so much. I love our conversation because I think it's just so encouraging. And again, I really appreciate the fact that you have reverts like yours truly, and also my friend Chuck Gadick. I know he loved his time meeting you and chatting about his journey home as well. We look forward to catching up, and I'm sure I'll have more information on Corpus Christi, because all the events going on here in Italy this week when we chat on the Sunrise Morning Show a week from today.
Sounds great, Teresa. Have a great day.
Have a great week, honey. God bless. Matt Swaim from the Sunrise Morning Show, and of course, The Journey Home and the Coming Home Network. And we will be right back on a Monday. We're going to tell you about something that's super important. It's scary in terms of the internet, but we are here to tell you how to protect yourself. Lisa Wheeler, president of Carmel Communications, talking about scammers going after Catholic stars and their fans. We'll explain. We're having a beautiful Monday. It is June 16, 2025. Many of the interviews that we do here on Catholic Connection could not be possible without the work of great PR and communication people who help line up these wonderful guests. And someone who was behind Carmel Communications, actually the president of Carmel, is my friend, longtime friend and fellow paisan, Lisa Wheeler. And she said she didn't mind having her interview postponed because we had Archbishop Cordileone. I said, well, he was an archbishop and he's a fellow Italian, so she was okay with that. But anyway, Lisa, this is such an important and interesting story. It's great to talk with you, and I'm glad you're on. I'm glad you're on top of this because you're a communications expert. So take us back to when you started as someone who works with the Jonathan Rumis, the Father Michael Schmitz, the big media people in the Catholic world, whether they're religious or laity. When did you first start recognizing a lot of what was already going on in the secular world started happening in the Catholic world? Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's fun to be having a conversation. Although this topic isn't the greatest thing to have to talk about, but
right.
But I'm glad to be here. I think we really started noticing it more with the rise of, and I hate to say it this way, but kind of the celebrity personalities within the Catholic space.
Mm-hmm.
And because we do so much work with Hollywood level talent in the film area that we work on, as we executed on releasing different films and episodic series and things like that to the Catholic space, we were getting emails and messages from fans or people of goodwill within the Catholic space asking whether or not this was a real direct message, or whether this individual was on Telegram, creating membership clubs for their fans. And it was just kind of this weird phenomenon that we just started to see an increase with so many of the different people that we were working with, having similar types of stories as to how these fraudulent, schemes are being created around, these Catholic personalities. So it's real.
Yeah, and it's scary because it's people have, people want to support the people that they, and Jonathan Rumi is so popular because of the great work he's doing, obviously with Chosen and his other efforts, and Father Michael Schmitz. I mean, these are really good guys who are doing good work, and so people want to support them.
Yeah,
right? But then they're being scammed because they're not asking for money in this way.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's the big thing, that part of this effort to come out publicly about what's going on is in an effort to help guard people against the fraud that's occurring, and to let people know that people like Jonathan Rumi and Father Mike Schmitz and several bishops as well, popular bishops in our space, they would never solicit donations, requests for money, any of those sorts of things through sort of the modern technologies of the time. They will use legitimate traditional means of asking for help or directing people to pay for something or provide money in a certain way. So if you are getting a message on being asked to go onto Telegram to be part of a membership club for Jonathan Rumi, or if through social media that's not part of an official campaign, you're hearing about Father Mike Schmitz raising money for a project that he's involved with, you have to be very careful to ascertain whether that is legitimately occurring before you give your credit card information or do something in order to be a part of or support those different those different opportunities.
Do we have any idea in terms of, we know that these scammers have made a lot of money in the secular world. How bad have people been hurt? Do we have any numbers in the Catholic world or even just the overall Christian world with this? Because I know there's some Christian, Protestant, evangelical personalities that have also been impacted.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak directly just, for the purposes of our time to what's happening in Jonathan's case. We have actually engaged in an effort with the FBI, specifically as it relates to what's going on with him, because the dollar amounts are quickly approaching in the millions of dollars that people have been scammed of. Most recently, we were reached out to by a woman who had been led to believe that she was in a relationship with Jonathan and that they were buying a house together in Alabama. And so she went through, all of the paperwork that was given to her. She thought that this was a legitimate communication that was going on because of AI technology and all of that. She thought that she'd been talking to him and ended up being fraudulently scammed out of $150,000 as part of that particular scam. So the FBI is now really getting more and more involved with these different cases of fraud happening in the name of various celebrities. It's a huge problem.
Talking with Lisa Wheeler, president of Carmel Communications, about these scams that are really crossing denominational and all kinds of different lines happening in the secular world, now the religious world. But there is some good news because there's a new nationwide initiative that was just launched in late May to really address this unfortunate growing trend. And we have about a minute left going into the break, but just let me read some of this, Lisa, and then we'll pick it up on the other side with some great advice here from you. So, driven by the alarming rise in digital deception, this is according to your press release, targeting religious audiences, this campaign will educate families, warn seniors, and equip faith communities to recognize and report scams. The effort includes warnings in trusted channels such as our church bulletins, parish newsletters, and faith-based social media. Family conversations about online safety for aging relatives. That's huge. Digital safety workshops hosted in parishes and diocesan or central religious offices. Amplification of religious leaders' voices on tech dangers. From Pope Francis's warnings about the digital revolution's ethical dangers to Pope Leo XIV cautioning about AI abuse. Spearheading the campaign is Teresa Payton, the first female White House Chief Information Officer in history and a national cybersecurity authority. She's advised Fortune 500 companies and government agencies on threats ranging from data theft to impersonation fraud. Lisa, this is huge, and I'm so glad that we're talking about this because it can be very easy to get caught up in this because AI, and I even saw an article the other day, not related to, for example, personality scams, but other types of scams on AI that are just so realistic. It has even people who work in computer technology fooled. That's how good some of these people are. So we'll continue our conversation. Yeah, I mean, right? Is
yeah, 100%. I received a message myself through a social media channel that was made to look like it was coming from Jonathan.
Wow.
And
Hold that thought, hon. We got to go into a break. Hold that thought. We'll pick it up on the other side. Talking with Lisa Wheeler, the president of Carmel Communications, warning scammers targeting celebrities and their fans, even in the Catholic world, and we're giving you information about how to protect yourself and your family. Stay tuned. Having a very important and timely conversation with Lisa Wheeler, president of Carmel Communications. He represents many people in the media, authors, speakers, actors, actresses. They do a great job, and we, get a lot of our material because they represent so many great people. And, Kevin Wander, who works very closely with Lisa, I consider him a partner of mine in Catholic radio because he and I are in touch a lot on all the different ideas, and he's always offering me wonderful ideas with Catholic folks who are doing great things. And Lisa, this has got to be so frustrating, though, for you. I mean, you guys have done so much in terms of putting people out there on such a huge scale, not just in the Catholic media world, but in the secular world. And some things like this happen. So you were saying when we were chatting during the break and then before the break that this even happened to you. And this is the thing that's really important because even people who are very sharp and who do communications for a living can be taken or almost taken or at least a little bit confused, right?
I've had a couple of incidences that have happened. One was the one we were just talking about, which is where I received a message from Jonathan that appeared to be completely legitimate. Like it was his voice, the whole thing, but there was just something that was a little bit off. And so I forwarded it to him. And that was, it was him verifying this is definitely my voice, but it was created through AI technology, but not my message. So it's easy to see how people that even don't know the person personally can get scammed. The second thing that happened to me is, because I'm a publicist and most of my work is geared around securing interviews, for my clients. I was reached out to by Katie Couric's people for an interview opportunity with Jonathan, and everything was legit. Email addresses were legit. The whole thing was legit. And I did a pre-interview with them prior to the actual interview itself taking place. And it was in that pre-interview that I got this just gut feeling that something was not right, because they were asking me to, the interview was going to be, done through Instagram and Facebook Live. It was going to be like a coordinated event. And in the way that they were asking us to activate just was different than any other, type of interview that we had done like that before. So I put them off and asked, to get back to them about this coordination in like 24 hours. And then I had our cybersecurity team look into the email that was sent to me and check out to make sure it was legit, reach out directly through a different means to Katie Couric's producers. And we found out that it was a complete scam. It was coming out of India. They had cloaked all of their email addresses for the Katie Couric's podcast show. And what our cybersecurity team discovered was that this has been happening with these podcasts of celebrities, celebrity-hosted podcasts, and PR agencies and publicists and reps of other celebrities for months and months and months, a growing issue. And it's a financial scam, so they're able to communicate in a way that gets bank information from like the producer assistants and kind of lower level people who are taken unaware. And then they also, the other way that they're utilizing this is to basically hack into the celebrities' social media profiles and cause just an uproar across their social media pages. One celebrity that they did it to, they got access to his platform and they went in and put up porn. So this is a Christian comedian, and all of a sudden his feeds were filled with pornography. So it's just an insidious effort that's happening, and it's coming internationally. I mean, it's coming from places like India and others. So
the people that are mentioned here, you were talking, of course, about Jonathan Roumie from The Chosen, but Mark Wahlberg, Chris Pratt, Mike Schmitz. You mentioned the comedian. I mean, it's incredible. These people are all doing such great things. We've got about 2 minutes left, Lisa. So what can the concerned person do about this? Or even if you're working in a parish, if you're a pastor or maybe you're a deacon or you're someone who works in ministry at the parish level, this is so important. Where can they get information on the campaign?
Well, I mean, I think that the effort is being done mostly now through social media and through the channels of the celebrities to alert people about these potential scams. I mean, my advice for those that work in parishes, especially when you're working with an older adult, population, because these are the ones that are suffering the most at the hands of these scammers, is to put announcements up, through their parish bulletins and newsletters. Dioceses should put alerts on diocesan websites, because even though we're talking about, actors, this is also happening with popular clergy, like you mentioned, Father Mike Schmitz, bishops who are really active across social media are being, spoofed, and there's fraudulent activity happening there. People should be encouraging their family members to always be skeptical of any sort of request that comes to them, asking for money or, providing details about their personal information to someone that they don't know or trust. churches should also think about even hosting workshops, in their community about safety online when it comes to these sorts of things.
Yeah.
So,
and I know Teresa Payton has a lot of information. I mean, even if it just, before the show, I was just Googling her, and it comes up, and there's all these great articles, and there's all these different links. But there's plenty of really good advice that's available and super important. Lisa, thanks so much. God bless your efforts to protect people, and also to continue to put great people like Jonathan Room and others out there in front of us, because they're making such a difference. Really appreciate you. Carmel Communications, Lisa is the president of that fine company. It is time for our scripture verse of the week as we wrap up the first hour of Catholic Connection on a Monday morning. It's June 16th, 2025, switching gears a little bit. But of course, it's always great to start the week out with a scripture verse, and that's why we love having Gail Buckley on with us from Catholic Scripture Study International. Hey, Gail.
Hi, good morning.
How are you?
I'm fine. You were just talking to our friend Lisa.
Yep, our mutual friend, Lisa. Yep, she's amazing, and she's doing great work in so many ways. All right, I love this verse. Super, super important. Tell us about it.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. It's from Matthew chapter 24, verse 44, and it says, "Therefore, you also must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect." You know, these words are spoken by Jesus when he was preparing his disciples for the end of the age. But these words, I think, are meant for us as well, because Jesus said, we know not the hour when he will come. Notice he doesn't say, you might want to get ready. He says, you must be ready. And why? Because he is coming. You know, he's coming at an hour when we do not expect. It's not to scare us. You know, it's not meant to scare us. It's to wake us up. You know, Jesus is he's not given a vague possibility. He's making a certain promise, and the time is unknown, but his return is guaranteed. Every day, you know, Teresa, we work, we text, we scroll on the internet, and we're concerned about 1,000 things. But how often do we think about, you know, today could be the day the Lord comes? How often do we think of that? I don't ever think about that. I think everybody's so busy these days. We're doing so many things, and we're concerned, like I just said, about everything. But how often do we think about that? So how do we prepare? Well, the fact is we should already be prepared. If we have a relationship with Jesus, you know, one whereby we have him at the center of our lives and we're doing our best to be faithful, then we're already prepared, and we shouldn't be afraid. I think thinking of a bride, you know, preparing for a wedding. She doesn't prepare out of fear. She prepares with joyful expectation. She can't wait to be with the one she loves. And that's how we should feel about the second coming of Jesus. Mm-hmm. I think to be ready for Jesus is to live in a daily friendship with him. And we're so blessed that we have his church that gives us all the things that we need to be faithful, the sacraments and his word and scripture, the Mass where we can receive him, body and blood and soul and divinity. All these things are so great that Jesus left for us to help us to reach heaven. And Jesus told us that no one but God the Father knows when he will return. But, you know, throughout the centuries, we've had these people who claim that they have some insight, and no one, you know, knows but them, and they tell people, you know, that there's going to be a great tribulation. And we know that's true. You know, the Bible tells us that we're going to go through a great tribulation before Christ returns. But these so-called modern-day prophets, they tell people to prepare by going to the mountains or building underground shelters and storing up food. But Jesus tells us that whomever seeks to save his life will lose it. And, you know, but it's not about saving our physical bodies, but our souls. Being ready doesn't mean seeking shelter or storing up food. It means faithfulness. No one will figure out when he's returning. We won't get a notification. But we are told to be prepared, to pay attention, and to be ready. And Jesus is coming. He calls us not to fear, but to be ready by walking with him, you know, trusting him, living each day as he might return tonight.
Right.
So
right.
The fact is, you know, not to be found sleeping, not to be found distracted, but to be found faithful.
Yeah. And to have, I think, God doesn't want us to walk around, in fear and trembling in the sense of, we're going to get struck down, God forbid, dead or something by lightning. But you have to have a healthy fear of God. We know in the Old Testament, and you're the Bible expert, it says, the fear of God is a beginning of wisdom. And what does that mean? It means that you understand He's God and we're not. And sometimes I see some of these things. Like I was just reading, I don't know if it was you who sent it to me, maybe it was someone else, but this horrible article about this TV program. It's not on Netflix, it's on something else, where they're totally mocking the Eucharist. And I'm like, I just don't even. I mean, it was really, really, really. I mean, obviously it's horrible to mock the Eucharist, but in the way they were doing it was so vile. And I'm like, do these people have no fear of God? Or and that to me is when you realize who God is. I mean, we can never fully understand. Our minds can't wrap around it, but when we understand God is God and we are not, that's what I think we're talking about. And always to be ready. And right?
I just want to say one more thing. We have CSS, Catholic Scripture Study, has a study on will Catholics be left behind? About the rapture, and that's another thing that's a false doctrine. And I think Catholics should know that's a false doctrine, that they're not, people aren't going to be taken up into the sky, and the Catholics and other people are going to be left behind. So that's a study we have at Catholic Scripture Study, written by Carl Olson, called Will Catholics Be Left Behind? It's a short study if anyone wants to look it up on cssprogram.net. But that's another false doctrine, by modern-day prophets, something that was started in Scotland in the 1800s, and it's totally untrue.
Yeah, absolutely. Gail, thank you so much. Very, very good verse, and of course, a lot of food for thought, which every verse in Scripture is. We appreciate you. We appreciate your great work at Catholic Scripture Study, and I know that because I'm on the board, and I'm also was a student for many years of Catholic Scripture Study. We had it at our parish. Still do, as a matter of fact. We'll be right back to let you know what's coming up in the second hour of Catholic Connection. Some more good stuff, of course, as Rosie would say. June 16th, it's a Monday. We appreciate your listenership. All right, so next hour number 2 of Catholic Connection on EWTN's Radio Extra, we are going to share with you the video message of our Holy Father from Saturday. It's so wonderful. We played a little clip in the news, but I thought since we had the time, it's only about 6 minutes long, six and a half minutes, so we're going to play it for you. And just a chance for you just to sit and listen to the voice of our Pope, Leo XIV, and what he's telling not just the people there, but specifically really reaching out to the young people, which was really powerful. Then I'm so excited to have a fellow radio person on with us, Jim Carroll, Executive Director of Spirit Catholic Radio. They are involved in a beautiful campaign, a Billboard campaign with images of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. How cool is that? So we're going to talk about that with Jim, and so far what the impact has been because June is the month of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. So again, our 2 cents segment will get a lot more than just 2 cents from the Holy Father. I'm sure when we play the clip for you, it's great. I think you're really going to enjoy it. And it's still so beautiful to hear our Pope speaking in English like this because he's American. It's still amazing if you think about it. So that's coming up at about 16 minutes past the hour after the news and weather. And then, as I mentioned, 2 segments with Jim Carroll, the Executive Director of Spirit Catholic Radio. And the topic will be all about their Billboard campaign. And I really encourage you to think about what we discussed with Lisa Wheeler and how you can bring this up at your parish in terms of protecting people from these increased scams that are going on. It's something to be concerned about. And we'll help you as much as we can to get you the information as well. We'll be right back. It is a Monday. You're listening to EWTN. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Catholic Connection with Teresa Tomeo, keeping you connected to your faith and your world. Teresa tackles the issues of faith and culture, the pro-life message, and media awareness. And now, here's Teresa Tomeo.
Happy Monday. Hope it's going well. Thank you for staying tuned to our second hour here on EWTN Radio Extra. Appreciate your listenership, however you listen, whether it be directly on the app, or maybe online, or maybe on a radio network or radio station. We're glad you're here. Speaking of radio stations, very excited after our 2 Cents segment. As I mentioned earlier, if you're listening to the first hour of Catholic Connection, we're going to be playing the Holy Father's beautiful message to those gathered in Chicago over the weekend for that celebration of his election. And after that, we're going to take a quick break, as we always do. And at the bottom of the hour, 28 minutes past, spend some time with Jim Carroll, the executive director of Spirit Catholic Radio. They're based out of Omaha, Nebraska. And they have this really cool campaign for the month of June and the month of the Sacred Heart. And they have a Billboard campaign. And so I can't wait to talk to him about how this was inspired, what the response has been so far, how many areas they're covering with the beautiful image of Jesus. So it should be a great conversation. And just importance in the growth of Catholic radio over the years. They have a fantastic operation, and we appreciate them over at Spirit Catholic Radio. So that is the show for today. Do hope you can stay tuned to the second hour again here on EWTN Radio Extra. Let's take a quick look at the weather for you so you have an idea of what's going on weather-wise. Let me just pull it up for you, because we know that there are going to be some severe storms. So here we go. National Weather Service saying severe thunderstorms capable of producing severe gusts, large hail, and perhaps a few tornadoes are forecast from the north central high plains into the upper Mississippi Valley. Now, widespread thunderstorms may produce excessive rainfall across portions of the Ohio Valley and Mid-Atlantic. Hot conditions and critical fire weather looming also over the Great Basin and Southwest through midweek. So that's going to be with us, these different types of conditions, none of which is a good one for the next couple of days, so just keep that in mind. It is a Monday. We're glad you're listening to Catholic Connection, produced by EWTN. Let's get started at 2 minutes past the hour so we can get you all the news right here on EWTN. Here we go. Well, in front of St. Peter's, in front of thousands of athletes of all levels, backgrounds, and sports, our Holy Father presiding over Mass to close out the Jubilee of Sport and celebrate the solemnity also of the Most Holy Trinity. In his homily, he reflected on how unusual the connection between the Trinity and sport might seem, but he also pointed out that since every good human activity reflects God's infinite beauty in some way, sport is certainly one of these. Sports, Pope Leo continued, can help us encounter God because they challenge us to relate to others and with others, not only outwardly, but also and above all interiorly. If not, he says, sport becomes nothing more than an empty competition of inflated egos. And thousands of young people, and you'll hear more about this coming up after the break, gathering at the home of the Chicago White Sox in Chicago on Saturday afternoon for a joyful celebration organized by the Archdiocese to honor the recent election of their native son, Pope Leo XIV. In his video message, a newly elected Pope, formerly an Archbishop from Peru, expressing gratitude and encouragement to the young people of his hometown and to the world.
As you grow up together, you may realize, especially having lived through the time of the pandemic, times of isolation, of great difficulty, sometimes even difficulties in your families, in our world today, sometimes it may be that the context of your life has not given you the opportunity to live the faith, to live as participants in a faith community. And I'd like to take this opportunity to invite each one of you to look into your own hearts, to recognize that God is present, and that perhaps in many different ways, God is reaching out to you, calling you, inviting you to know his Son, Jesus Christ, through the Scriptures, perhaps through a friend or a relative, a grandparent who might be a person of faith, but to discover how important it is for each one of us to pay attention to the presence of God in our own hearts, to that longing for love in our lives, for searching, a true searching, for finding the ways that we may be able to do something with our own lives to serve others.
The event, held on the feast, of course, of the Most Holy Trinity, was attended by Cardinal Cupich, who also said Mass, auxiliary bishops, clergy, families, and young people from across the Archdiocese and beyond. Meanwhile, the Holy Father holding his first ordinary public consistory of his pontificate on Friday morning, with cardinals giving their formal approval for the canonization of 8 blesseds. During the ceremony, the Holy Father announcing that Blessed Pier Giorgio Frassati and Blessed Carlo Acutis will be canonized together, and that will happen on September 7th. Now, the canonizations of the 2 young saints, one from the early 20th century, the other from the 21st century, have been greatly anticipated due to the great devotion among the faithful. The late Pope himself announcing the canonization of Blessed Pier Giorgio and Carlo at the general audience last November, on the 20th of November 2024, prompting thunderous applause from the crowds gathered in St. Peter's Square. Now, the canonization of Acutis, who was beatified in Assisi back in 2020, was scheduled for April 27th, but of course was and would coincide with the Jubilee of Teens, while Frassati's canonization had been set for August 3rd. The postponement of Blessed Carlo's canonization was announced on the day of Pope Francis's death in late April, and it was then widely assumed that Blessed Pierre's canonization would be similarly delayed. In other news this morning, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is defending his country's military actions against Iran. In an interview with Fox News, he said Sunday Israel will do whatever is necessary to remove the nuclear threat Iran poses.
We had to act. It was the 12th hour. We did act to save ourselves, but also, I think, to not only protect ourselves, but protect the world from this incendiary regime.
The escalation of airstrikes and missile attacks resulting in a growing number of deaths in both countries. Meanwhile, President Trump claimed in a post on Truth Social the U.S. could easily get a deal done between Iran and Israel and end the bloody conflict. Iran and the U.S. were set to hold another round of nuclear talks in the country of Oman, but those talks were canceled due to that ongoing conflict. And the president, meanwhile, warning Iran again to stay away from U.S. targets as its conflict with Israel continues. Senate Majority Leader John Thune reiterated the president's concerns on Fox News Sunday.
What I would suggest to Iran is that they not target Americans in any of this, because if they do, they better be prepared, because we will respond.
The South Dakota Republicans' comments echoing President Trump's post on Truth Social, warning if the U.S. was attacked in any way, shape, or form by Iran, the full strength and might of the U.S. armed forces would come down on you at levels never seen before. The suspect in the killing of a Minnesota lawmaker and her husband is set to appear in court this afternoon. Vance Bolter, facing multiple charges after a 2-day manhunt, including 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of attempted murder. He is accused of killing Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband and shooting Senator John Hoffman and his wife. The Justice Department is also looking into possible federal charges after investigators say they potentially found a hit list with names of some federal lawmakers. A superintendent, meanwhile, of the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, Drew Evans, says it appears, though, the suspect acted alone.
We are confident that the violence that he committed and the murders he committed and the attempted murders, that he conducted that activity alone.
The suspect is a former Walz employee whom Walz appointed in 2019 to a 4-year term on the governor's Workforce Development Board, according to the New York Post. He earlier served on the governor's council back in 2016 under previous governor Mark Dayton. Multiple police officers were hurt in Portland, Oregon over the weekend, Saturday night actually, during a violent riot at an Immigration and Customs Enforcement facility. A mob launching fireworks, smoke grenades, and threw rocks at federal law enforcement as they broke glass and forcibly entered the ICE facility. Homeland Security officials talking with Fox News say 4 officers were hurt during the attack, though federal law enforcement was able to secure the facility eventually. And Michael Castor tells us, meanwhile, the suspect is in custody following a deadly shooting during weekend protests over in Salt Lake City.
Police arrested 24-year-old Arturo Gamboa in connection with a shooting during the No Kings protest that killed a 39-year-old man. Shortly after shots were fired, officers said they found Gamboa wounded and hiding with an AR-15-style rifle nearby. Witnesses said Gamboa removed the rifle from his backpack and ran toward the protest crowd. The man believed to have been at the scene as part of a peacekeeping team opened fire on Gamboa, who was taken to the hospital for treatment before being booked on a murder charge. I'm Michael Kastner.
A curfew in effect in parts of downtown Los Angeles after police declared an unlawful assembly over the weekend. Officers could be seen using tear gas and pepper spray in an attempt to disperse the demonstrators. It comes as No King Day protests were taking place around the country. And Mark Mayfield tells us President Trump, meanwhile, not backing down on ICE raids that have sparked over a week of protests around the country and especially in Los Angeles.
On Sunday, Trump announced he is directing his administration to use every resource possible on mass deportation efforts. He mentioned increasing enforcement actions in Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, and other cities he considers the core of the Democrat power center. Trump made the announcement a day after No Kings protests against his policies were held in major cities across the U.S. I'm Mark Mayfield.
Meanwhile, the president says it's about time the U.S. is celebrating its victories.
Thank you to the greatest, fiercest, and bravest fighting force ever to stride the face of this earth.
Speaking at the 250th Army Anniversary Parade after conducting a re-enlistment ceremony, President Trump highlighted the Army's history.
On June 14th, 1775, liberty got its shield and the freedom got its sword. Those first Army patriots in the American Revolution fought against a fearsome enemy and impossible odds.
Trump saying no matter what happens in the future, America's Army will always be there. The parade came again as No King's Day protests were taking place across the country in opposition. Tammy Trujillo tells us U.S. Army says it has exceeded its 2025 recruiting goals, and they've done that apparently 4 months ahead of schedule.
Last week, the Army announced that it had signed contracts with over 61,000 future soldiers. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said a new wave of patriotism among America's youth is responsible for the increase in military recruitment. At the same time, a report from Georgetown University says currently less than 30% of American youth meet the requirements for military service due to a range of physical, academic, and behavioral disqualifiers. I'm Tammy Trujillo.
And finally, in our news segment at almost 13 minutes past the hour on a Monday morning, June 16th, there's a new study that says childhood trauma can add to a woman's risk of endometriosis later in life. Researchers reported in the Journal of Human Reproduction that women's endometriosis risk jumps 20% if they experience childhood trauma like violence, sexual abuse, a death in the family, or troubled parents. Violence created the strongest time, more than doubling a woman's chances of developing an endometriosis. Researchers say the disease, which is an inflammation of the inner lining of the uterus, is common, affecting about 1 in every 10 women, but the causes are still not fully understood. It is a Monday. We're wishing you a beautiful day today. We appreciate your listenership here at EWTN. Let me tell you what's coming up on the program after the break. We are going to share with you the beautiful message. It's a short one. I think it's about between 6 and 7 minutes. So I thought, well, why not? Great to hear the Pope speak to Americans as an American and sharing his thanks for celebrating his election as a first American Pope. And this is what happened over the weekend in Chicago. Thousands filling the baseball field that is home to the White Sox. And, of course, the Pope is a White Sox fan. And he gave a beautiful message, especially talking to the young people there. And then at the bottom of the hour, we are going to have an interview with Jim Carroll, the executive director of Spirit Catholic Radio, all about their Billboard campaign featuring the Sacred Heart of Jesus images. How wonderful is that? It's going to be a great second hour. Hope you stay tuned for the entire 60 minutes. We'll be right back. It's a Monday, June 16th, 2025. Great to be with you here on EWTN's Catholic Connection, the second hour of the program on EWTN Radio Extra. You can also hear us, of course, on the app. For all the information on all of our great programming, EWTN.com. I thought since we have the time in 2 cents, and instead of hearing from me, it would be great if you could hear from our Holy Father, especially since many of us are busy and we may not have had time to actually sit down or follow the coverage or listen to the entire statement that he gave, beautiful video message that he gave for Saturday. So imagine the people gathering there in the White Sox home field, right field, right? Thousands of people were there on Saturday. And they're realizing, most of them probably from the Chicago area, that the Pope of the worldwide Catholic Church is a hometown boy. I think people are still trying to take all that in. And then they're going to get a personal message from him. He wasn't there in person, but he did deliver a beautiful message, which is, by the way, found on the Vatican website, and we also have links to it as well in our various news outlets. And it was so powerful, especially encouraging people, young people in particular, to come back to the church. So let's take a listen. This is the Holy Father's video message, audio obviously, given to the crowds that gathered on Saturday for a very special celebration. There was a beautiful mass, and there were all kinds of other events. They were celebrating the election of Pope Leo XIV, a native of Chicago.
My dear friends, it's a pleasure for me to greet all of you gathered together at White Sox Park on this great celebration as a community of faith in the Archdiocese of Chicago. A special greeting to Cardinal Supich, to the auxiliary bishops, to all my friends who are gathered today on this, the Feast of the Most Holy Trinity. And I begin with that because the Trinity is a model of God's love for us. God, Father, Son, and Spirit, three persons in one God, live united in the depth of love, in community, sharing that communion with all of us. So as you gather today in this great celebration, I want to both express my gratitude to you and also an encouragement to continue to build up community, friendship as brothers and sisters in your daily lives, in your families, in your parishes, in the Archdiocese, and throughout our world. I'd like to send a special word of greeting to all the young people, those of you gathered together today, and many of you who are perhaps watching this greeting through technological means on the internet. As you grow up together, you may realize, especially having lived through the time of the pandemic, times of isolation, of great difficulty, sometimes even difficulties in your families, in our world today. Sometimes it may be that the context of your life has not given you the opportunity to live the faith, to live as participants in a faith community. And I'd like to take this opportunity to invite each one of you to look into your own hearts, to recognize that God is present, and that perhaps in many different ways, God is reaching out to you, calling you, inviting you to know His Son, Jesus Christ, through the Scriptures, perhaps through a friend or a relative, a grandparent who might be a person of faith, but to discover how important it is for each one of us to pay attention to the presence of God in our own hearts, to that longing for love in our lives, for searching, a true searching, for finding the ways that we may be able to do something with our own lives to serve others. And in that service to others, we may find that coming together in friendship, building up community, we too can find true meaning in our lives. Moments of anxiety, of loneliness. So many people who suffer from different experiences of depression or sadness, they can discover that the love of God is truly healing, that it brings hope, and that actually coming together as friends, as brothers and sisters in community, in a parish, in an experience of living our faith together, we can find that the Lord's grace, that the love of God can truly heal us, can give us the strength that we need, can be the source of that hope that we all need in our lives. To share that message of hope with one another in outreach, in service, and looking for ways to make our world a better place gives true life to all of us, and it's a sign of hope for the whole world. To, once again, the young people who are gathered here, I'd like to say that you are the promise of hope for so many of us. The world looks to you as you look around yourselves and says, we need you. We want you to come together to share with us in this common mission as church and in the society of announcing a message of true hope and of promoting peace, promoting harmony among all peoples. We have to look beyond our own, if you will, egotistical ways. We have to look for ways of coming together and promoting a message of hope. St. Augustine says to us that If we want the world to be a better place, we have to begin with ourselves. We have to begin with our own lives, our own hearts. And so in this sense, as you gather together as a faith community, as you celebrate in the Archdiocese of Chicago, as you offer your own experience of joy and of hope, you can find out, you can discover that you too are indeed beacons of hope, that light that perhaps on the horizon is not very easy to see, and yet as we grow in our unity, as we come together in communion, we can discover that that light will grow brighter and brighter, that light which is indeed our faith in Jesus Christ, and we can become that message of hope to promote peace and unity throughout our world. We all live with many questions in our hearts. St. Augustine speaks so often of our restless hearts and says, our hearts are restless until they rest in you, O God. That restlessness is not a bad thing, and we shouldn't look for ways to put out the fire, to eliminate or even numb ourselves to the tensions that we feel, the difficulties that we experience. We should rather get in touch with our own hearts and recognize that God can work in our lives, and through us, reach out to other people. And so I'd like to conclude this brief message to all of you with an invitation to be, indeed, that light of hope. Hope does not disappoint, St. Paul tells us in his letter to the Romans. When I see each and every one of you, when I see how people gather together to celebrate their faith, I discover myself how much hope there is in the world. In this Jubilee year of hope, Christ, who is our hope, indeed calls all of us to come together that we might be that true living example, the light of hope in the world today. So I would like to invite all of you to take a moment to open up your own hearts to God, to God's love, to that peace which only the Lord can give us, to feel how deeply beautiful, how strong, how meaningful the love of God is in our lives, and to recognize that while we do nothing to earn God's love, God, in his own generosity, continues to pour out his love upon us. And as he gives us his love, he only asks us to be generous and to share what he has given us with others. May you indeed be blessed as you gather together for this celebration. May the Lord's love and peace come upon each and every one of you, upon your families, and may God bless all of you so that you might always be beacons of hope, sign of hope and peace throughout our world. And may the blessing of Almighty God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit come upon you and remain with you always. Amen.
Amen. Isn't that beautiful? Our Holy Father, Pope Leo XIV, his video message to those gathered over the weekend at the White Sox baseball field in the Archdiocese of Chicago, where they had a beautiful celebration for their hometown boy. Of course, Pope Leo XIV, born and raised in the Chicago area. And what a blessing he is, not just to Chicago, but to all of us. We'll be right back. We're going to talk radio and also how Catholic radio is making a difference beyond the airwaves. Yes, we are. We'll explain. 27 minutes past the hour. Thanks for tuning into the second hour of A Catholic Connection, a production of EWTN. Always great to catch up with our wonderful colleagues in Radioland. Jim Carroll is a big friend of ours at EWTN, does such a great job with Spirit Catholic Radio. He happens to be the executive director. And Jim, I know many of our listeners are familiar with your network, but just for background, if someone's a new listener to EWTN, is not familiar with your beautiful network, Spirit Catholic Radio, just kind of give us a brief overview just to start out the interview this morning, and thanks for joining us.
Oh, you bet, and sure, would love to. Well, Spirit Catholic Radio has been on the air for 26 years now, so we're one of the, we started up right after WDEO, January 9th of 1999. We are now the fourth oldest EWTN affiliate. So we've been around for a little while. We started with a little 500-watt signal on a 50-foot telephone pole, and it's now grown over I've been here 23 years. It'll be on the Feast of Our Lady of Mount Carmel on July 16th. 23 years, and we now have 20 stations covering the state of Nebraska. We reach parts of Iowa, Kansas, South Dakota, Colorado, and Wyoming. We've got listeners in all those areas, and a little signal up in Wisconsin. So been very, very blessed by tremendous support from our listeners, which has allowed us to grow and really be a part of the Catholic life in the 4 main dioceses that we serve.
You've grown so much over the last, as you said, 26 years. It's absolutely amazing. But what's so unique about Catholic radio, and you know this, that it's one thing, obviously, to broadcast the truth, which we do every day, and you do every day in working with us very closely here at EWTN. But the projects in which we're involved out in the community, because we're Catholic radio, I mean, we go beyond, I don't want to use the word just, broadcasting Catholic programs. But, for example, your campaign with a billboard campaign with images of Jesus, and specifically for the month of June for the Sacred Heart, when we do something like that, I think it even it's a combined effort to have such a huge impact, don't you think?
Oh, yeah. We've always felt it's key to be a part of the Catholic community, again, the areas that we broadcast into. So besides doing this billboard campaign, which I'll get into, we're very involved at the parishes, the schools, the apostolates, and ministries. We bring speakers across the state. We just had Dr. Ray Garendi do a 4-stop tour of the state. We'll bring in and do conferences with people from Catholic Answers or from the St. Paul Institute. We have an art contest that we get about 5,000 entries from grade school students, and we will put the winning art on 75,000 holy cards, distribute them across the 138 Catholic schools that are within our listening area. We've carried Catholic high school sports. This is the parade and festival season. At the end of this month, we're going to be doing what we call our 3 days of summer fun, and we have sticker stops across the state of Nebraska where we're blessed in that we have vehicles, we have tents. We've got Honk If You Love Jesus signs, and we're giving away little Sacred Heart of Jesus figurines, which are tied in with the billboard campaign. And so if there's an event that's happening at a parish or at a Catholic apostolate, we're usually there. We will promote it, and we'll have a presence there. And our goal is to let people know 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, they have access to quality Catholic programming through EWTN. And then we do a number of local programs, from pro-life programs, teen programs. We've got one for men. We're going to be launching one on marriage here shortly. And so being a part of the community, having our bishops on regularly with the rosaries is all a part. So the question at hand, the Sacred Heart billboard, Sacred Heart of Jesus has always been a part of my life growing up. We've always had the images there. Our station is dedicated to the 2 hearts, the Sacred Heart of Jesus, Immaculate Heart of Mary. And we had a listener a couple of years ago come to us and said, it would be fantastic. We've done billboard campaigns before, but they'd said, even within the church, not everyone knows about the month of June being dedicated to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. And they said, you ought to look at doing some type of a campaign. Maybe we could put banners. We do a lot of banners in the parishes, these 5x2 stand-up banners. And we had one particular person said, I think I saw that they're doing billboards now during the month of June. Why don't we look at a billboard campaign? So we designed a billboard in last year in the Omaha metro area, which has got about 1 million people. We were able to put up 6 billboards, and the response was tremendous. It got a lot of views at a number of different Catholic websites, and a little something in the Catholic news agency picked it up, and a few others. And so this year, and again, this was done outside of Catholic radio stations need to raise money to be on the air. We don't receive any funding from any of the dioceses, but we receive tremendous support from our bishops and from our priests. So we didn't want to tap into the funds that we have to broadcast, on the network. And so this gentleman raised the money himself last year to do the 6. And this year he told a few more people, broadened his circle. And so in the second largest city in the state of Nebraska is Lincoln. That's our capital, home of Husker football. It is a town of about 340,000 people. And so they were able to raise for 30 billboards. And these are the ginormous 14 by, I can't remember the exact size, 14 by 30 of the image of the Sacred Heart. So, and we doubled it in the Omaha metro area. So we've got 12 boards in the high traffic areas in the Omaha metro, and then 30 throughout Lincoln. And so the response there has just been overwhelming.
So have you gotten any of this as a reporter in me? Have you gotten any negative pushback on this? I mean, I know you're in a very solidly Christian area, but there's always people who get offended by something or another, and especially maybe if someone has fallen away from the church even, they think it's too religious. And any type of negative pushback? Yeah, the local television station interviewed me for about 20 minutes. This is a Lincoln station, and it was a wonderful conversation, and he kept alluding at, what are we doing this for? I knew what he was getting at. And, we said, well, June has been the month of the Sacred Heart in the Catholic Church for the last 159 years. Pope Pius IX set up the whole month. Now, we've had the Sacred Heart of Jesus is going to be following. Forget the exact calculation of how it's done, but it moves to different times depending on when you've got Pentecost and Easter. Mm-hmm. And so, I knew where he was getting at, and what they did was a man on the street interview. We told them where the boards were, and they were asking people, so what do you think of this billboard? And for the most part, I would say people were overwhelmingly supportive. We even have a Nebraska football standout that they happened to just Okay, hold that thought. We're going to finish this story and talk more about this after the break, because this is really interesting. We're going to talk about how the media are covering this and the response. 99.9% of it positive. Of course, as always, one bad apple in the bunch, but we'll talk about that when we come back with Jim Carroll from Spirit Catholic Radio, celebrating in more ways than one the month of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, June. Thanks for tuning in to EWTN, second hour of Catholic Connection on EWTN's Radio Extra. Jim Carroll, a friend of ours here at EWTN Radio, Executive Director of Spirit Catholic Radio, talking about their beautiful effort to spread the image and the beauty of the Sacred Heart of Jesus devotion through the month of June, of course. So, Jim, finish this very riveting story. So you do the interview with this TV station, you sit down, the conversation goes pretty well, and then they do the man on the street type interviews. Then what happens after that? So it was very good. For the most part, it was positive. They didn't mention to me that they were going to be looking for people that were going to be opposed for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. And so they found a number of people saying they thought it was great. These were people that were Christian. They weren't necessarily Catholic, and they brought up that it was a Catholic radio station. And they found one person who spoke on air after they showed about 4 or 5 positive. One person who said that they were of the Muslim faith and that they found it offensive. But they couldn't say why it was offensive. Right. If we had some picture of Muhammad, would Christians say they were offended by that? I don't think so. Mm-hmm. But then they had some people that they didn't have on camera that they said they were offended because June is their month for LGBTQ. Mm-hmm. And, and they kind of left the article... or they left it at that, and they cut away to me after, again, it was a 20-minute conversation, and I talked about June as a month of a number of different things, and I had said, I haven't heard June as a month of survivors of paper cuts, and it's almost made it look like I was being a little bit crass about it or writing off people. But the Sacred Heart image itself, and we are directing people to our website where it has
a little bit of information about the Sacred Heart and about the other months that the Catholic Church celebrates. And, what they didn't catch me saying was the Sacred Heart is about the love of Jesus, the burning love, the image of the Sacred Heart. He's pointing to his heart in most of the traditional pictures that you could see. He's inviting people that wherever you're at, that the love of Jesus is there for inviting everyone to be enveloped there. And so later this month, we are going to be out on the streets with as I mentioned, with our vans and our tents, and we've got volunteers, and we're going to be handing out these little 1-inch figures that says, and it comes with a sign that comes with it. And we said, everyone needs a little Jesus.
Yeah.
And
well, those little figures, they're popping up everywhere. I don't know if yours is a little different, but they're popping up everywhere, which is great. And I think it's true. And, it's interesting. They always have to get someone negative in there to comment. That's just the way the news operates, unfortunately, now. But to me, what's so important is the vast majority of the people understand. And the image of God, it is going to offend some people. It is going to offend people that don't agree with us. But, we still have to go and we still have to preach the truth in love. And nothing you're doing is anything but that. I mean, what you're doing is giving the heart of Jesus to people and helping them understand visually that Jesus is pointing to his heart. And it's just, that's always been my favorite image of Jesus. We're talking with Jim Carroll, Executive Director of Spirit Catholic Radio, on their beautiful Billboard campaign dedicated to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Now, I'm wondering, have you talked to the men of the Sacred Heart? Because they do a great job. I've had my home actually consecrated to the Sacred Heart of Jesus and Mary twice. You can do it more than once. I love that campaign. Have you been in touch with them?
Well, we here in Nebraska, we have a group that's originated from the Philippines. They're located in Sioux City, Nebraska. There's a Sioux City, Iowa. And a long time ago, I'm going to get the name. I wish I should have looked them up before. But it has the name of the dual hearts, the Sacred Heart of Jesus, the Immaculate Heart of Mary. And so long ago, and I'm glad that you brought it up. We're going to have to invite them to come back. Long ago, they came to the station and dedicated the station to the two hearts, the Sacred Heart of Jesus and the Immaculate Heart of Mary. And I think, and that's what they do. They go around and they'll do home enthronements.
Yeah.
I do it at my home, and we did it here as well. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah, that's just so beautiful, and it just goes hand in hand with what you're doing. I think it's awesome. And the other thing too that's so important, and we'll talk a little bit more about Catholic radio, is the fact that it's really important for radio stations to have a presence at the parish, because if you're from, like, for example, if you're from a large archdiocese or a diocese, chances are not everyone obviously is going to know who you are, but being in the parish and having a regular presence is super important, isn't it?
Oh, you bet it is. And we have it, all the parishes in the state of Nebraska, except for 3. We have a little kiosk that has our program guide, which we change regularly. We also have a little tune-in card, and we ask people to be parish ambassadors to make sure that when those get empty, that we get them refilled. And we ask people to hand these cards out and invite people to tune in and listen. And so with this campaign, we also made these 5x2, so it's 5 foot tall by 2 foot wide. That also has the image of the Sacred Heart. We've got them in every parish in the Lincoln metro area. We got them in the metro area of Omaha. There's 53 Catholic churches, and so we have those at about a quarter of the station or a quarter of the parishes in the Omaha metro, but in all of them in Lincoln. And so the response there from the pastors is it's giving them the opportunity to talk about Jesus and the Sacred Heart, mention the billboards, and also mention why they've got those signs in the lobby. And so it's been wonderful outreach. Included in that billboard, we do have our local signal on there, 102.7, as well as go to spiritcatholicradio.com/Sacred Heart, all one word, to learn more about that devotion.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you find that when you're out there in the community that's what really is, I mean, obviously being on the air and having such great programming, but the people being able to connect the voice, the name, the face, what is that like in terms of outreach?
I love going out when we bring in speakers, or if we're going to be in a parade, or if we're going to be at a festival, or as I was saying, the sticker stops that we're going to be doing on the 25th, 26th, and 27th, we hear so many wonderful stories. People stop by. You know, we make kind of a big splash. We use yard signs as well as bumper stickers or window clings. And so people of all faiths will stop by when we go out into the public and thank us for being on the air. It seems like that seems to be our largest growing because we have made a real effort. I've got, at one time we had three and a half resources or 3.5 people, one part-timer. That was their mission. They were community engagement. They were going out to the parishes, to the schools, the different Catholic apostolates and ministries. And we do a 2-hour morning show where we're featuring parish life. So we're having the people from the Knights of Columbus and just the different groups that are out there. And we have our pastors on and we have our shepherds on the air talking about what's happening. It will put our priests' birthdays on the air. And so it really, the bishops in Nebraska and then the Des Moines diocese have all said it's really had a unifying effect. Sometimes even though you've got a diocese right next to another diocese, it's thou shalt not go to church in another diocese. But they've said that that's really broken down the barriers. The priests, because we feature them, they do Sunday Mass prep. They'll do our daily morning reflections, and we have them on a segment called the Good Book Club. So our folks are really attuned, or they've got their favorites from within their listening area, but we've expanded that. And so they said, for the state of Nebraska, we got something else that's unifying besides Nebraska football, and that's the Catholic radio station. So we've had billboards and yard signs up all across the state.
Well, the reason I'm bringing this up is that you do, I think, an exceptional job at this. I mean, you're a real leader in this area in terms of the personal outreach. But how many times, and you and I know this, have we seen the studies, have seen the surveys of why people? One of the reasons why people leave, they don't feel personally connected, right, to the parish or to the mission of the church, or people don't talk to them when they show up at Mass, or if they go to an event, it's not very unifying for them or welcoming from them. But being there as a Catholic radio station, being present for people on the weekends, all these different messages you're getting out, that has a huge, huge impact on a person's relationship with God and with the church, because they see God in that.
100%. When we talk with our pastors, we're always asking them, we don't go out, we never do talks for money. We always are going off talking to the priests, inviting them to come on the air, inviting them to share the message. They've sometimes only got people, for the 1 hour they're going to clock in, as I say, when they cross themselves after dipping into the holy water, and then they check in, they check out. The Catholic radio is on the air 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And with the localness that we've got combined with the programming that EWTN has to offer, we are featuring parish life and the sacraments. We always tell people, we don't need radio station groupies at the events that we hold, but we need people to be activated in their parish. And we've done quite a bit of surveying of our listeners, and over the years it shows, and this is something that when we get our newly ordained, which we will feature them on the air from the 4 dioceses. We try to get them on within their first 6 months of being ordained, share what their vocation story is, and inviting the pastors. And recently we started inviting the different parish ministries that are involved with evangelization. And we've asked them to come in and share the things that they've done within their parish to revitalize. And we've got people listening to that saying, hey, we need something like that in our parish as well. So it really serves as a connector that way. And we've seen just an explosion in the number of people that have been listeners as well as supporters. We've always got a goal of getting new listeners.
Right.
And we're focused on that 20% of people that are attending a parish haven't really stepped out to do anything other than come to Mass on Sundays. They're looking for something. So we do diocesan-wide Bible study with Jeff Caven's Great Adventure. And so we've always got something started. We've got those on Tuesdays, on Thursdays, and on the weekends. So for those parishes that, they don't have a Bible study, or we've got a lot of rural parishes as well, and they can't afford to buy the materials and so forth. So we will offer these different opportunities. And then, we ask them to come and share their evangelization story.
But it's all about connection. It's all about outreach. It's all about being there 100%. For people, right? And being present. I always talk about when Deacon Dom and I were in formation, and the first weekend, one of the leaders of the retreat said, when being Christian is 75-80% about showing up. And this is what you do so well in your community. And, if people are listening and they just started a Catholic radio station or they're praying about it, I mean, you're a great person with whom to speak, because you're right there in the community. You've done so much and had so much success. So how do people contact you, Jim, or how do they get information? Let's say they want to do a billboard campaign similar to yours. Where do they find you?
I am they could contact us. Our main call letters are KVSS. The VSS is Veni Sancte Spiritus. So Kilo Victor Sierra Sierra. KVSS at kvss.com, or my personal email here is jimc at kvss.com. They could visit our website, spiritcatholicradio.com. Part of the charism of our apostolate here is to share all the good news that we have with other Catholic radio stations.
And you do that. We're almost out of time. You do that also at our radio conference, too, and we appreciate you. Jim, God bless you. Keep it up. I'm sorry you had to bring Dr. Ray in, but oh well, I hope it went well. We'll talk about that later. Thanks. You too, Jim. Jim Carroll, Executive Director of Spirit Catholic Radio, spreading the love of Jesus in their Sacred Heart of Jesus billboard campaign. We'll be right back. Appreciate your listenership. EWTN's Catholic Connection coming up tomorrow. Very excited to have my good friend and amazing author. Just keeps cranking out these great books, especially for kids. His next one, which is available, called The Miracle Book. Miracles do happen every day. And of course, we have a big miracle coming up this weekend that we're going to be marking, the Corpus Christi miracle, which is based on the Eucharistic miracle of Bolsena, Italy. I'll be talking a little bit more about that on our Shrines and Wonders Wednesday, so getting ahead of myself, but just wanted to mention that because he talks about miracles and helps us understand miracles for people of all ages. But I believe this book is for adults in addition to having other books on children. But we're talking with Anthony DiStefano tomorrow. And we're working on several other story ideas for you as well. In the second part of the show, in this hour, the 10 o'clock hour Eastern of Catholic Connection, we will be doing our Newman Guide News with Kelly Solomon from the Cardinal Newman Society. It's going to be a lot of fun because we're going to be talking about the upcoming canonizations on September 7th of Carlo Acutis and also, of course, Pier Giorgio Frassati, set for, as I mentioned, September 7th. This is something that was just announced on Friday by the Pope after he had the papal consistory. They were confirming the blesseds, and it's really kind of neat, I think, the fact that they're both going to be canonized together in one event on a Sunday in September. Now, they're from two different centuries, but very similar in terms of what they attempted to do and what they accomplished in their very short but dynamic lives. Talk down on Tuesday. Have a great day. Ciao, ciao.